Hey y'all, welcome to Adventures with Aggie, brought to you by the Ryan Martin Foundation. Today we have Diego Mariscal on the show. He's from 2gether International and he's also a paraswimmer for Team Mexico. He's going to tell us all about his story in swimming, as well as how he started 2gether International, and a bit about his accelerator project, whose deadline is next week. Please welcome Diego.
Nice.
Diego, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to hear about you and 2gether International. But first, kind of just get started, can you give me some background into who you are and what you do?
Sure. We can start right at the beginning. So I was born in the States actually by accident. My parents, who are both Mexicans, were shopping in the States, in the United States, and I was born 6 months and a half into my mom's pregnancy. So pretty tiny baby. As a result of that, I have CP, cerebral palsy, and it's funny because especially my mom, she jokes and says that I've always been really stubborn, even before I was born, because I wanted to get out quickly, right? And so growing up with CP was definitely, in Mexico specifically, was definitely challenging. I remember asking a kid if he wanted to play with me, and he said that his dad didn't let him play with weird kids, right? And so it's definitely from an early age, definitely seeing how society perceives people with disabilities differently. But I think one of the things that was really interesting in my life and a really unique opportunity was being able to meet other disabled people through swimming and through sports. I started swimming because I needed physical therapy. And so, in a way, for my parents to keep me motivated and keeping me wanting to continue to exercise, they said, "Why don't you compete?" And we didn't really know what to expect, but we ended up. Me and my physical therapist, who was also my trainer, found out that there was a competition going on a week from when he told me, and so we only had a week to train, but we ended up training really hard and actually winning a gold medal for my state. It was the first gold medal that my state had won in the Paralympics. And so I started to get all this media attention and, this recognition. And I was just kind of along for the ride. I loved it. But I also saw that it gave me a platform to advocate and to do more. And so with that, I was able to rally other people, and we actually advocated for a accessible a more accessible facilities where we were training. And so because the ones we were at were completely, there was fungus and it was not great and completely inaccessible. And so we ended up going to the mayor's office and saying, this is where we're training, these are our results, we need better facilities. And they did. They got new facilities. The Mexican First Lady came to inaugurate the facility, and now it's one of the key centers for Paralympians in Mexico. But I share all this because I think a thread in my life has been this idea of how do we change the perception that people have of disability, and also how do we bring disabled people together to create change? Long-winded answer, but that's the sort of root of my work and my life.
That's awesome. I appreciate you kind of setting the stage there for some more questions, but I guess just first follow-ups for you. Can you describe cerebral palsy for people who don't know what it is?
Yeah, so cerebral palsy manifests in different ways for different people. Typically what it is a lack of oxygen in the brain, and that can come from a brain injury or birth. And for me, the way it manifests is trouble walking, reading, and writing. I have to ask for accommodations in school, but for some people, it affects their hands, their speech. For me, it was primarily my legs.
Got it. Okay, that helps. Just I don't want people wondering and they're not
Yeah.
sure what's going on. But love that. Thank you for explaining. Follow up to your sporting kind of you kind of talked a little bit about your sporting career, but I want to go a little deeper into that and then we'll talk about Together International. But when did you start swimming and how did you know that you wanted to do this competitively? I know you won one of your first meets. Was that the time when you were like, this is my thing?
Yeah, yeah. So it was really by accident. I love getting the attention. I love knowing that my therapy didn't have to be a chore anymore. It could be something that I had more control over, that I was actually, that it could be competitive. I'm a very competitive person, so that it could be competitive. Um, I love that I got to travel all over the country and meet people. One of my closest friends just won her bronze medal in the Paralympics, and it's crazy that we met almost 12 years ago at a meet. So you get to meet this amazing people. Um, it's honestly something that I miss doing, but it really is a life's work and life's dedication, and and my life pulled me in a different direction. But I like to think that I bring the same level of tenacity and ferocity to the work that I do now to when I used to swim.
That's awesome. You're really good at leading into what's coming next. So
Good.
let's talk about the work that you're doing now. Where did Together International come from? Where was this idea originated?
Yeah, good question. So together, I was lucky enough to had built another organization called Limitless in Mexico when I was in high school. And it was again rooted in this idea of how do we change perceptions of people with disabilities. And so what we did was we would do things like eating without being able to see, or using public transportation in a wheelchair, or communicating without speaking. And that was a way for students to learn more about disability. And so in 4 years, we went to 15 high schools across the country. 80% of it was corporate funded. And it still continues to be one of the largest youth led movements on disability. I don't know how they're doing with COVID right now, but it was a great experience. And so my first intention with Together International was to basically bring what I had done in Mexico to the States. But I soon realized first, I learned more. I learned more about the disability rights movement. I learned more about the issues people face. And one of the things I realized that was a big issue was unemployment. People with disabilities face one of the highest levels of unemployment, almost double the rate of non-disabled people. And what's crazy is that this is a problem that the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is over 30 years old, was meant to solve. And so to me, that was really confusing, right? This law that had all these goals, and one of the corner goal was to reduce the unemployment, and that hasn't been achieved, right? And so I guess I've always been really entrepreneurial and driven to solving complex problems, because immediately I started thinking, okay, educating students is fine, but how can we go beyond that? What does it mean to really change perceptions? And so we tried a bunch of things. We realized that when we were doing workshops in classrooms, it was a great way to educate students, but it wasn't working directly with people, with disabled people. And so I said, we really need to pivot to be able to work directly with disabled people. Then we moved to doing advocacy campaigns. And so we would pick a topic for a month, and we would do like police brutality, or we would do what's another one? Employment, or we would do accessibility in schools. And that was a way to basically support advocates directly. But then everyone would tell us, your campaigns are great, we want to participate, but we need money for jobs, right? And so we said, well, if jobs is an issue, why don't we focus on entrepreneurship as a way to solve that issue? And that blew up. I mean, we had like over 50 people from all over the country come to our first meeting. We had the deputy mayor speak in support of our work. They were one of our first financial supporters. So it just kind of like the stars aligned, but I think also my personal development and 2gether's personal development very much go hand in hand. And so it's interesting to see how I have evolved and how that mirrors the organization.
Yes, I love asking that question that you're kind of hinting at to all of my guests. Usually it's like, what did you learn about yourself from competing in your sport? But for you, what have you learned about yourself through the process of launching and creating and acting on 2gether?
Yeah, good question. I think that I really am an entrepreneur, that I really am kind of wired this way. And what I mean by that is I'm a little bit obsessive, right? Like I think about work. The last thing I think about when I go to bed is work. The first thing I think about when I wake up is work. And when I remember, even to go back to swimming, I remember being on my meets and practicing and being in the pool and thinking, this was back when I had created the first organization, Limitless, and thinking about, I was doing the labs, but I was almost doing it monotonously, like automatically, because in my head I was thinking, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to change this. So it's this like all-consuming thing. And I always thought that, oh, everyone's like this. Everybody loves their jobs. Everybody, thinks about their passion 24/7. And I think what I've learned along the way is that that's not the case. Not everybody is like that. And to be honest, it's a little bit lonely sometimes because people don't recognize the intensity that it can take. But at the same time, that helps me because it demonstrates that the work that we're doing is very important, and that's the competitive advantage, right? Being so obsessed in the good sense of the word. I think, my life is pretty well balanced, but obsessed in that, I think about 2gether all the time. And I think in a way also athletes can relate to this because it's all consuming when you're competing. You have to figure out what you eat, you have to figure out when you go to bed, and all those things. I have to think about them too. So what's great is being able to translate some of the skills that I gain as an athlete into my entrepreneurship journey, basically.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's probably why so many athletes do have some kind of other project that they're doing while they're competing, or maybe they retire and they start a foundation or something like that. I feel like that's a very common thing for athletes to do. And there's also just the drive to use your platform to do something.
Yes.
Which I think is huge, especially now. Everybody's talking about the athlete platform and how to make a difference using sport and their voices and stuff like that. But I think that's a really good point that you made there. But awesome. Okay, I want to ask you more about 2gether, kind of go into the mission. You already kind of talked about how it came about, but what are some of the mission, the values, like how would you sell it to a listener to get involved?
Yeah, great questions. And I get so passionate about the origins and the story. Sometimes I get to like plug in my own work. So We work on supporting entrepreneurs with disabilities, and that really stems from, people with disabilities are already entrepreneurial. From the moment we wake up, we have to figure out how do we get dressed, how we drive, how we communicate, right? And so all we're doing is we're translating those skills into business skills, into entrepreneurship skills. And so we support entrepreneurs of all at all stages, whether you have an idea, whether you have some traction in the market, or whether you're looking to raise funds. We support entrepreneurs at various stages. Right now, our current big project or big program is at an accelerator cohort that's specifically focusing around technology and supporting entrepreneurs, founders with disabilities working in the technology space. And this is particularly exciting because it's possible, this cohort is possible with the support from Google for Startups, which Google for Startups is sort of the startup arm of Google. So it's really exciting to be able to offer these entrepreneurs products and services and mentorship and coaching with the support from Google for Startups. And so really excited. The application closes September 13th, so it's coming up, but feel free to reach out to us with questions, comments. We're always happy to even get on a call, one-on-one with people to strengthen their application. Super excited. This is the first tech cohort that we're doing, so really excited, and I can't wait to hopefully come back and share with you all the results from it.
I'd love that. I love that. You and whoever comes out of this project, super excited. Afterwards, we'll have to have you guys back on.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. I'm pumped. I'm pumped for you. I'm pumped for Together. I'm pumped for whoever these people are that are entering into this program here. But I'm going to ask specifically again, how can people find more information on Together, you, the accelerator, and kind of what does this application situation look like?
Yeah, great. So our handles all over are Together-International, but the kicker is that Together is with a 2, so it's 2GETHER. -international.org. Since this is a podcast and you can't really see the logos and stuff, the G actually in our logo is a wheelchair, and it's to represent the disability rights movement and the history of it. Even if you look at the wheelchair, we try to do it more modern than your typical wheelchair. So ingrain some of that disability component, but also recognizing that it's disabled people and non-disabled people coming together to really change the perception of disability. So that's a bit about where you can find Together stuff. For me, my name, Diego Mariscal, in all places, right? Happy to feel free to reach out and happy to engage. And then what does the application look like specifically? So I would say it's pretty detailed. We ask, background of the person, background of the business, some financial information. So I would say that for a successful application, we would want to see some traction, some proof of concept. This particular program, although we offer programs for all stages, but this particular program is not meant for idea stage, right? It's meant for someone that already has some traction. So if that's you, please consider applying. I know that oftentimes I also say, the when we get opportunities like this to work with Google for startups and other amazing partners, it's really also up to the disability community to show up and to take advantage of these opportunities. Because the more we can, and even recognizing that the majority of disabilities are actually invisible, right? So even if you have anxiety, depression, that definitely counts as a disability. The question is, do you identify with this community? Are you willing to be sort of vulnerable and talk about how is your disability? That's always our model, right? Like, how is my disability a competitive advantage for business? And so if that's you, then please consider applying. I know we would love to have as many diverse athletes and non-athletes as possible.
Perfect. I love it. Great plug. But let's just kind of wrap up with the question that I ask every single guest that comes on the show. What advice would you give to younger Diego?
I would say trust your gut, trust your instincts. This might go kind of a long-winded story, but there were a lot of people, especially in the early days of Together, that didn't see kind of the value that we were trying to create, didn't see the importance of what we were trying to do. And so it's a delicate balance, because you definitely want to listen to people. What's interesting is and I may be going on a tangent here, but what's interesting is when you ask for feedback and people give you feedback and you listen to their feedback, people assume that means that you have to take their feedback. And that's not the case. When you're listening to feedback, you should listen, internalize, and try to comprehend why they're saying what they're saying. That doesn't mean that you have to agree with what they're saying, right? And so I think that was a lesson that I learned at a turning point in my life, that it was like, I really do know what I'm doing. I really this is really important work, and it should get done. And so being able to just trust myself and trust my inner wisdom is something that I certainly wish I knew early on.
For sure. Totally agree with you. Not a tangent. Makes total sense. I appreciate this kind of storytelling part of that answer too. Speaking from experience, which is always good. But this has been great. Diego, thank you so much for sharing your story and telling us all about Together. I'm excited. I'll link everything below: the website, the application landing page for the accelerator. And yeah, I hope everybody goes and applies.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for having me talk about this work. Is definitely really important to me, and I am excited to see what comes of it.
Diego, thank you so very much for coming on the show. Stay tuned for more episodes of Adventures with Aggie coming on Thursday, featuring Goalball UK.